Hey, with your evening story channel, I post new interesting stories every day. Subscribe and click the bell to not miss it.
Being a mom is not only a great happiness, but also hard work, especially being a mom of allergy sufferers. The fact that her daughter Maria Jennings inherited from her daddy not only blue eyes and high forehead, which her mom diligently hid under blonde bangs, but also food allergies. Kate found out right after the little one was born, when Betty first came into the world, and the food on the baby menu was limited exclusively to the left and right breast. As a mom, the newborn began to have problems. She began to refuse food, capricious, crying, and then her cheeks became covered with changs and hearings. Of course, the young mom immediately sounded the alarm. First, she, as it is supposed to be, read horrors on women's forums and screwed herself up to the marks. All gone, and I'm a worthless mother. She put on her best bonnet and went to the children's hospital. The pediatrician convinced Mommy that with age the problem will pass, and Kate should just watch her own diet and even keep a diary to understand what the child is allergic to. Then it turned out, thanks to a grandmother on her husband's side of the family, that William the girl's dad also suffered from food allergies. Yeah, he got over it quickly, by high school for sure. Kelly calmed her sister-in-law down and didn't bother her much. I remember when he was not allowed candy and he hid in the closet at Christmas with a bag of candy. By the time they caught him, it was just wrappers, but that's okay. He survived. He's all grown up. On that optimistic note, Kate's eye was starting to twitch, but there was nothing to be done. And so Betty turned 1 year old, then 2, then 3, but things just kept getting worse. Finally, the Jennings family decided to make a forced trip to another city to a more knowledgeable doctor. There, having conducted the necessary research, the doctors rolled out to the parents a whole sheet which outlined and stamped a list of forbidden and recommended for feeding products. In addition to the standard set of taboos such as cow's milk, strawberries, and chocolate, the little girl was contraindicated with certain types of meat, fish, and cereals. In general, the diet was going to be strict, and it was also hard on the pocket. The young family needed rabbit stew, turkey cutlets, yogurt from goat's milk, not what the parents ate. William often joked, looking at his daughter with appetite at the steamed fish that are gourmet today on the menu, hopefully worthy of Michelin stars. Then the father of the family, who is much more healthy food, liked pasta, hugged his spouse, interested. "What are we supposed to have for dinner?" "Bread and salt." Kate laughingly waved off her spouse's teasing and threatened to feed him zucchini puree. When Ruth went to daycare, she was supposed to have a special menu for allergy sufferers. However, trouble happened there too. Once the teacher who came out to replace a sick colleague fed the girl milk porridge, the woman, judging by her age, was still following the nutrition of the Boy Scouts. Therefore, she insisted that she was not to blame for the swelling. Betty is allergic to milk porridge. "No one can be allergic. What are you making up?" She scolded Kate when she pointed out a mistake. "Kids have been raised on oatmeal their whole lives, and you're making up stories about me." Kate realized the argument was pointless. She was sure. A couple more minutes, and the woman would declare that the real problem with modern children was that their parents let them look at gadgets. It's not cow's milk they're allergic to, it's a cartoon. As a result, Betty had to be given to a private daycare center after several incidents. The family had to tighten their belts even more. William Jennings served in the police force, but he was an honest man, so he was not particularly rich. But the responsiveness of a police officer, his courage, determination, and goodwill served the Jennings family in a different way. William was recognized by almost everyone in town, including influential people. The man earned his fame and a reputation not by word, but by deed. So one day he rescued a stray dog from the tracks. The shaggy black dog had fallen onto the tracks and could not get out. The platform was very high. People who had just been eagerly awaiting the arrival of their train began to oohing and ahhing. Some were crying. Everyone looked anxiously at the tunnel, from which the train was already moving towards them, right on schedule. A dog whimpered pitifully, thrashing about on the tracks. Then Jennings found himself at this hour on the platform, threw himself through the crowd, and jumped fearlessly. The sleepers. He managed to save the animal to the applause of those present. William promptly forgot the incident. But the people remembered. The next morning, he woke up a celebrity in the city. After all, an article about him appeared on the internet. However, valiant deeds did not end there. Jennings, even on vacation, distinguished himself, coming with his family to the local river he wanted to fish. The river was the widest in the city from the shore. It developed to the horizon like the sea. However, the vacation was cut short when the man heard cries for help. It turned out that the girl, drunk on champagne, fell overboard of the cruise boat. The guy she was on a romantic date with probably decided that their love wasn't strong enough to jump for the girl. Meanwhile, the girl who had been drinking got caught in a strong current and started cramping, and then panic set in. But hobbling out of the water, she began to sink. Of course, Jennings immediately rushed into the water. The policeman later learned that he had saved the daughter of a local lawyer, the owner of his own law firm. The man thanked the savior for a long time, even wanted to express his gratitude in monetary terms. Only William refused. However, they became friends with Jacob the lawyer. Another time, walking with his daughter-wife in an amusement park, Jennings saved 2 children. All in all, he had a life more fulfilling than Hercules from the myths. Kate even made a joke about her husband playfully squinting at her. "You, when all 12 feats will do, to stay with us. Or are you going to Olympus to Daddy Zeus?" She sang along, embarrassed, when she read about her husband another article in the newspaper. Of course, William did not consider himself a hero and waved away the dithyrambs in his honor. "It's just my job," grumbled the man, embarrassed. Phoebe was proud of Daddy, too, and when asked who he worked as, always puffed up, blushing, and answered, "Hero of our city." She claimed that she would definitely become the same and would never pass by a man in trouble. Kate, on the other hand, worked not only as a wife and mom, but also as a librarian. She had always loved books and found solace in the romance here, what hovered between the book stacks. That's where she found her policeman. By the way, William wasn't much of a reader. It's just that the man once saw Kate through the library window. The young woman was watering the flowers that huddled on the windowsill. A day later, Jennings put on his best shirt and got a library card. The man came to the library every weekend and borrowed what he thought were the smartest books. Bold, determined, in the service of immoral causes, William was still just a Phil, so it took him many hours of reading Jean-Paul Sartre, Camus, and Remarque, which William found boring, before he called the librarian for a date. The first date, like the pancake, went awry for the novice hostess. The problem was that Kate decided to strike up a conversation about the books the man had read. That's when William, blushingly and more pale, admitted that he liked detectives and horror, not existential novels. Jennings didn't end up miscalculating, though. Upon learning that the man had been agonizing over reading ad nauseum, hoping to impress her, Kate laughed for a long time, and laughter is known to be a sure way to a lady's heart. There Kate melted. Soon they were married, and a year later Betty was born. The girl parents adored, bought in love and care. However, the spoiled little girl was not. She grew up a nice, clear girl, except that her kindness often came out for the Jennings family sideways. The girl could give any of her toys even to a strange child. She gladly shared sweets, even if she did not have a crumb of generosity left. She went beyond the shores. So Irinka, being a little girl, took her mother's gold jewelry out of the house, generously like a sultan in a harem, distributed them to her friends. It was a good thing that the children's parents discovered their daughter's chains and rings in time, so they returned the Jennings wealth. When Betty grew up, her allergies became more frequent and took other forms. Now the child suffered for love of cats and dogs, whose hair made the girl sneeze and cry. However, she could not pass by Shostakov. What to do with a good-natured child? Mom and Dad didn't know. After all, kindness is not harmful. Habit, not one get rid of it. However, and the child still had to explain that to live to the detriment of themselves is not an option, that people can be self-serving. After all, even with the cute Betty, one sly girl from the yard made friends only because of gifts. Betty learned with age to limit her impulses, to give people her last shirt when she turned 7 and went to school. Kate faced another set of challenges. At first, things were going well. Later, however, she came home in tears. It turned out that she was unable to complete the teacher's assignment and did not receive the coveted sticker, the equivalent of junior high school grades. But why? Wondered Kate then, wiping beads of tears from her daughter's wet face. I didn't have a pen with the hoppled curl. How didn't you? Again frowned the mother. I collected a whole pencil case for you from the stationery. One Maria gave it to Maria. She liked it very much, and today Eugene's deskmate forgot his pen at home and was very upset. I gave him mine so he wouldn't be sad. The girl confessed. Kate did not know whether to cry or laugh at the young altruist. Coming from the service, the father shook his head and gave his verdict. At least we know the daughter will grow up to be a sister of charity or a social worker. One less problem to worry about. Kate was not against such a profession for her daughter, but still decided to have another educational conversation with her. Kate felt that her daughter understood her. However, after a while the family faced new difficulties. Betty was already in the second grade, but the nutritional situation did not change. Taught by bitter experience, the mother decided that she would pack her daughter's own lunches and skewers. Kate tried very hard and spent a lot of effort and time to get the child ready for school. After all, in addition to completed assignments in the notebook, unlearned poems and a pleek of autumn foresters, she collected a full lunch for the girl and hid it in a thermos bag so that it would not spoil. Soon, however, Kate began to notice something amiss. Her daughter, running from school, immediately sat down at the table. She pounced on the hot lunch with such an appetite, as if she had been starving for a week. It happened all the time. After school, no matter how hearty lunch mom did not prepare for her daughter. At the same time, the little girl not only did not gain all, but even seemed to lose weight. Kate told her husband about her observations. It's just a growing body. She's expending a lot of energy at school. Put in more skewers, suggested the spouse. Kate did so, but the situation did not change. The girl answered her mother's questions reluctantly and hid her gaze behind her eyelashes as if she were hiding something. One day, Kate called her friend Alice, the same mother, but of an older son and a geography teacher. When Jennings complained about her daughter's strange appetite, Alice authoritatively told her own story. And maybe your starlet is being taken away, she asked. What do you mean, taken away? Kate gasped. But think about it. Here at our school, there were inadequate scandals because of the fact that classmates or senior students took away from the children's homemade breakfasts. Or distortions, of course, the stronger ones bullying the weaker ones. School is a wild jungle. There's money being taken away fights. Kate was scared out of her wits. She knew that the food at school left a lot to be desired. Stew, cabbage, curd, and semolina, in which from curd was only the name of liquid porridge. Of course, many children grew a nose from such treats and lived on bread and compote. Therefore, home country, which the mother spoiled her daughter, and even beautifully decorated cut out of fruit, heart, and flowers, could have attracted the school's so-called predators. The librarian's fantasies immediately conjured up horrible images of her naive and sweet daughter being abused, her lunch being eaten or thrown in the trash, leaving the child hungry. Of course, it was too early to draw conclusions. Kate waited for her daughter from school and sat down across from Betty at the table. "How did you like your lunch today?" she asked carefully, looking into the girl's face. Betty stopped working her fork for a moment and froze, squinted at her mom, but then shrugged. "Delicious." The woman nodded. "Did they overcook the cutlets?" "No, great cutlets," Betty assured her mom. Kate frowned, realizing the girl was lying. She didn't give her the cutlets to take with her. The next morning, Kate gave the child her lunch with her, putting a tape in it that the girl couldn't stand. Betty never finished it and sometimes preferred to starve, rather than eat the meal. Only this time the lunchbox was empty. Betty nodded again, saying yes, it was delicious. One mystery was followed by a second. A second-grade classroom teacher called Kate, wondering why her daughter was staying late in the mornings. What did the mom wonder? She got off to school at the same time every day. The teacher was silent for a moment and then informed Betty is a nice girl, but she is always late for her first class. For weeks now. That's when the mom decided to follow her daughter, who wasn't answering her questions. That's when it all came out. True to her word, Kate slipped out of the house and followed the other one. It was only a brisk 5-minute walk to school, about 10 minutes if you counted the crows. However, Betty in front of her mom was stealing what? The trail turned the other way. She went to the highway, behind which there were cottages and vegetable gardens. The girl went straight to the abandoned plot. It was overgrown with tall grass and fruit trees, from which apples and pears fell to the ground because of the wind. And next to the well stood a ruined cottage with broken windows and dark walls. Rose painted with spray paint. Kate started to worry. She even wanted to stop her daughter, but decided to see the detective investigation through to the end. Betty walked right up to the cottage, and peering through the window with the remnants of glass, shouted, "Hello, Grandpa Mike," in a friendly and very loud voice. The mother's heart clenched in her chest when she heard a man's hoarse voice. "Granddaughter, again you came." Native Feeder smiled broadly and entered the dark cottage. Kate, on the other hand, was numb. Her daughter was going to some old man's dingy, scary house as if in slow motion. Chilled, the mother moved closer and saw through the window as Betty pulled out her lunch container. "Here, I brought you some nourishment. Mother made the fish and soles again today. You remember, you liked them very much. Now I'm going to feed you." The girl actually took out a fork and got ready to feed the old man. Kate had no sooner entered the house than she saw the grandfather putting his palms to his face and crying. "God, child," he whispered, wiping away his tears. "God bless you and your heart. Are there such people in our world? How I wish I could see your face." When Kate heard the old man's words, she immediately realized who was in the house of the old and blind grandfather. The woman had seen him sitting at the temple a couple of times. He was begging for alms. His eyesight and hearing were poor. So her daughter spoke loudly and fed the old man from a fork. A branch fell asleep under Kate's foot. The old man didn't hear. Betty, on the other hand, turned around. When she saw her mom, she turned pale. "Mommy," the girl gasped, and the fork in her hand trembled. "Betty, what's going on?" Kate exhaled. She stepped inside, looked around the miserable street. It had rained during the night, so there was still a puddle on the floor next to the window. An old man sat and apparently slept on boxes in a pile of thirds. There was a puppy snoozing in the corner. "Mommy." The girl's voice trembled. Grandpa Mike had been chased out of the house. "Yeah." The old man squinted, realizing he had new guests. The thin man picked himself up and wiped his face, gathering the remnants of his pride. "Hello," he said. "I'll explain everything to you." It turned out that Mike Ivanovich used to work as a physical education teacher. However, if he was able to bring up other people's children, then with his son, albeit not his own. Everything went wrong. Daniel was the son of Mitya's wife. The couple had no other children. However, the boy grew up ungrateful and greedy. Then he found the same spouse. When his mother died, Daniel showed up in town and threw his stepfather out on the street, claiming that the apartment was already cramped and his wife was expecting a child. Although the apartment belonged to the former teacher, they ceded it to the spouse of the old man's retirement. The children were learning to take it away too. Daniel arranged it so he wouldn't have to work. "Why didn't you go to the police?" Kate gasped. "Ashamed daughter," the man confessed. "How can I tell people? And how long do I have left in that life? What's the use of fighting?" So the old and sick man settled on an abandoned country estate. Betty found him when she ran after the puppy that lived with Mike. The man wrestled him away from the children, who tied to the tail of the dog cans. The girl was scared of the old man at first, but then befriended him. The schoolgirl became his pity, so there she was bringing school lunches every day. True, Betty claimed her mom knew about everything and cooked especially for her friend. When Betty first showed up, I thought she was an angel or I was out of my mind. Or I'm in the other world, Grandpa admitted, wiping his eyes with trembling fingers. "I was very bad then. My head was burning. It was nice. I couldn't go to the churchyard. There was no one to ask for help. Not a drop in my mouth, not a crumb. Your daughter has already saved me not only by care and a spoonful of food, but by making me believe in miracles and goodness again. I was about to say goodbye to my life. I didn't need her doggy loneliness, but when Betty appeared, it was as if light and warmth settled in my soul. I decided to trample the earth a little more, just to feel like a human being, not indifferent. I'm sorry, Mom and Dad." Betty didn't say anything. She thought they'd scold her. Of course, her mom had explained to her many times that helping people wasn't always the right thing to do. In this case, Betty thought her mother would be displeased. However, She could not go against the will of her heart. Kate, after listening to the story and looking again at the old man's lodgings, shook her head. No, he must not. There was a good man to live out his life like that. She took the man into her apartment and then told her spouse all about it. William, not thinking long, dialed the number of his lawyer friend, the same one whose daughter he had once saved. Thus, the tandem of a policeman and a lawyer quickly found a solution to the greedy son, drove him out of the old man's house. Mike returned to the apartment, but not alone, but with a mongrel named Tuzik. However, Kate did not stop there. She, together with Betty, began to visit her grandfather. Mike, what had gotten into their hearts? He turned out to be an incredibly joyful, good man with a rich life story. Soon the man became a real part of the family and the Jennings. Betty grew to love him like a kind-hearted grandfather. Of course, Daniel didn't give up so easily. One day, Grandpa Mike ended up in the hospital with a heart attack. Then his little boy, who had never visited him in the hospital, came to the father's house. But he didn't ask about his father's health. He got straight to the point. You don't have much time left to register the apartment for me. I'll inherit it anyway. It took only Mike, who realized that in the world there is selfless good, was already a different person. He loved his son. But this time he did not go along with him. I will sign over the apartment to my granddaughter Daniel, so we cannot count on her, said the old man. But my son is a senile old man. Daniel got angry. Have you forgotten? You have a grandson. I didn't remember. Grandpa shook his head sadly. You didn't bring him to visit me. Only your child is your concern, Daniel. I have a granddaughter. Her name is Betty. She'll get a keepsake from me for keeping me from starving to death. When you threw me out in the cold like a piece of junk, Daniel yelled then. Did all the neighbors hear how unhappy he was with his father's decision? But it was for nothing. Grandpa Mike had already decided that a good soul who did a selfless deed was worthy of a reward, and he hoped that there would be more such people in the world, and then life would be better. Betty did not know about her inheritance as a schoolgirl. It wasn't interesting. She just liked to play with language and listen to interesting stories from Grandpa Mike. The girl grew up like that, an open and kind person. And who knows, maybe Grandpa Mike will be right, and people like Betty will be able to make the world a little better.